We're now into the first full week of campaigning in the Scottish Parliament election. Today, the STUC published its self-styled Workers' Manifesto designed to deliver dignity in work. Their General Secretary, Ros Foyer, came into the studio, and for a perspective from the business community, she was joined by the entrepreneur and investor, Marie Macklin. Ros Foyer, what's the STUC's top priority for this election in your manifesto?
Well, I think our top priority is to see public services being properly funded. We can see that they are not delivering the sort of services and support that ordinary working people need to see them deliver, and that's something that can only be solved through proper conversation about taxation.
What's business looking for in this election, Marie?
What business is looking for, Colin, is to get out of life support. They're basically on life support just now because of the lack of growth in the economy. So they're looking for growth through infrastructure, through taxation benefits, and this red tape that constantly is tying business up is preventing the economic growth that will in fact deliver that growth to help pay back this £5 billion deficit.
Ros, you say that the public services are at breaking point. Aren't the public finances at breaking point too?
Well, you're right, the public finances are at breaking point, and what we can all agree on is that the status quo is just not working. But we can't kid ourselves on that we can cut our way into economic growth or deliver tax cuts out of thin air without some serious impact on already struggling public services. So we really need to have a conversation about how we can distribute the wealth that does exist in this society and make sure that we're properly funding our public services.
So you both want economic growth. How do you get it?
Well, you've got to have, as we said, good infrastructure. We need roads, we need education and skills development for people. We need to make sure that economic growth can be based on, you know, employers want the same thing as actually workers want. They want public services that are there to support them when they need them.
How do you work out how you get economic growth in Scotland? Because it's been in short supply, it's been hard to find.
It's flatlining, Colin, and it's absolutely, every time I come on this show, it's the same story. We keep hearing that they're going to come out with proactive economic policies. Last year, the housing, there were only 3,000 private sector house completions. That's the lowest since 1997. I mean, this week I've been looking at, you know, the policies the parties are looking at and the manifestos, and Malcolm Offord's Reform Party in Scotland had recently put out their manifesto, and he's talking about the tax cuts. He wants to cut tax in Scotland, take away 6 bands down to 3 bands and put us 1% below the rest of the UK.
I mean, the Tories want to do something much the same. Do you think that cutting taxes like that's the way forward to increase economic growth? I
believe in tax cuts at that appropriate level, but you can't just make the tax cuts. You have to look at the bigger picture and the economic infrastructure that's built around those tax cuts. And that's things like looking at how do we grow the economy by growing businesses. We incentivise coming from national level, working alongside Scottish Government level. We need to get into schools. We need to create an entrepreneurship in our schools for young people.
But sticking with the tax cuts, you're entirely in the opposite view.
Yeah.
You want to increase taxes in your manifesto.
Look, tax cuts are about fantasy economics, and you know, we've got failed Tories giving us fake promises based on fantasy economics here with the Reform Manifesto. None of it is going to actually deliver the growth that we need. Our public services are already cut to the bone, and yes, we do need the proper infrastructure for business to grow, and we also need skills development for business to grow. We're facing some massive economic challenges. We've got AI coming in, we've got a need to move to a green economy. You cannot do that without serious investment. We need to recover our economy.
There's elements here that you're agreeing on. But fundamentally, you're completely diametrically opposed on tax. She says it's fantasy economics.
I don't agree with that, because even if you look at Anna Sarwar's report from last year, the Moscatelli report, it actually states within that clarity regarding taxation and the financial services sector. 47% of them said that Scotland was unattractive for the rest of the UK because they didn't want to come here. So there is a huge question on taxation. We need to reduce tax to get our blue-collar workers who are paying more tax in Scotland than they are in the rest of the UK back in the ball game here. If we get our blue-collar workers a lesser rate in tax, they will go out and put that money into pubs, clubs, retail and local economies, and that's what we need to do.
Well, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, despite we do need wages to rise, that's absolutely true. We need wages to keep up with the cost of living, but what we don't need is tax cuts. And actually what the Scottish people are telling us is we don't need tax cuts. There was some very interesting research brought out last week by the Wellbeing Economy Alliance that actually showed that 90% of Scots think that the gap between the rich and the poor is too high. They want to see the wealthy pay more taxes, and 66% of Scots would rather see taxes rise to invest in our public services to give us the services we need than see tax cuts and public sector cuts.
Is that not a problem that you want to see public services improve as well? But if you cut taxes, you've not got as much money to spend on them.
No, if I work a lot with the public sector. We've got some great public sector workers out there, and when I speak to them, a lot of the public sector actually want to exit the public sector and actually want to take their pensions and go in and be entrepreneurial and want to start up their own SME businesses. So if we have SME businesses, more of them coming through, more public sector coming out and starting up their own businesses, what we're saying, we're going to tax them higher? Absolutely not. I want to see blue-collar workers paying less tax so they can put more money into our local economy. And if I can come in here, if we get more money into that economy, only last week, the publicans and the hospitality sector in Scotland met in Glasgow, and you had great entrepreneurs like the James Mortimers, the Donald McLeods, basically saying NIC, all the taxes are affecting Glasgow city centre.
In Scotland, how do you cut taxes and increase the spending? How does that work? How do you do that?
You can come up with a robust tax system as the Labour Party, the Conservative Party and Reform Party agree on taxation. They're saying we need to cut taxes. That needs to be part of robust measurements within their economic plan and their economic agencies to drive growth.
This is the economics of the Liz Truss government that we're talking here, you know, and we've got all these failed Tories moving into reform, trying to peddle us the same old, same old. These are fake promises. They're not going to make a difference for ordinary working people. What we need is a grown-up debate about taxation, and we need our politicians to step up, be bold, scrap the regressive council tax, start giving us a proportionate property tax, start taxing wealth appropriately, and start investing in skills and further education, in public services, in roads, in all of the things that are going to get our economy fired up.
Is there any way that your two separate demands on this can coexist?
Absolutely. I mean, Ross and I agree on a lot of things, and you know, for me, it's about creating that wealthy nation, a healthy nation, and what we need to do is. But
that takes a lot of time. That's not happening overnight, is it?
Absolutely, and that's the problem. We're sitting
so if
here
you're making these big tax cuts, you're making cuts to public services until you've built up that growth, and that could take years.
I think, well, as I sit here tonight, what I've heard from every politician, including the SNP government, is there's a 500 billion cut coming. And £5 billion cut.
A £5 billion black hole coming in the next Parliament.
And how are they going to sort that? They've said themselves they're going to have to make cuts. They should have been honest with the people long ago, and they haven't, and it's caught up with them now.
Well, it's not just about tax. We've also got outsourcing in our public sector. You know, there's £2 to £3 billion a year of profit made by outsourcing, and that's just sheer profit going into private pockets and shareholders' pockets. We should be reinvesting that in our public services. So I'd like to see some insourcing going on in the next Parliament. I'd also like to see us taking a stake in our energy, rather than just investing and handing money over to the private sector for energy. We should actually be taking a stake and making profits out of it.
To start the campaign, we'll see how the parties respond to all your demands. Thanks for joining us in Scotland tonight.
Thank you.
Let's now hear from our